Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a very good day, and above all else, that you're looking after yourselves and one another. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, with day 10 of our 31 Perfect Albums. I am joined by Mr. Bill Schuster. How's it going, Bill?
Good morning, Armando. I'm still waiting for my coffee to kick in, but other than that, doing quite well. Thank you.
Same here. Good to know. And Mr. Ken Cheshire, how are you doing, Ken?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And the one and only, the man of the hour, Mr. Jim Bricker. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing fine, Armando. Happy to be back amongst the usual suspects.
Usual suspects. Yes, yes. That's what we are. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing with, as I said, day 10 of our 31 perfect albums. All right. This is a list that we've all put together very painstakingly so. And we've picked albums that, in our opinion, are all killer, no filler. So, as is customary with these episodes, I will pass the virtual mic down to Mr. Bill Schuster as I see him on my screen. Does it go for it, Bill?
Thank you, Armando. I'm going to start out with one that's already been mentioned. Uh, when I first heard the term perfect album, the thing that immediately came to my mind was this album. It's my all time favorite. We've already discussed it a bit, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. It's the very definition of a perfect album, though this album cover is certainly not perfect. It has been well worn over many years, as you can see.
Another mortar attack. Yeah. All right.
Yes, it's taken some damage through multiple moves and kids and everything else. Uh, but still, the record itself holds up great. It's an original 1974 copy, and it sounds just as good as it ever does. Um, it's one of those albums, as I maybe whoo, yeah, the coffee really hasn't kicked in. I had previously mentioned when we discussed it that yeah, it sounds good no matter what format.
Mhm.
This was, I think, kind of well, it was the debut of the classic band where Bob Siebenberg joined on drums and Doogie Thompson on bass and John Helliwell on woodwinds and backing vocals, which John used to confuse me sometimes because I couldn't tell at times which was him and which was Roger when they started doing some of the high pitched vocals.
Mhm.
Um, just pointing out a couple little cool things here. You have the lyric sheet from the original album. They had a nice way to be very clear about who was singing lead between Rick and Roger.
I see that. Yeah.
Rick in yellow, Roger in white.
Cool.
And one thing I noticed about this that didn't happen as much in later times that Rick and Roger really took part in each other's songs more. So,
Hmm.
and the difference was immediately notable after. But yeah, really, there's not a whole lot more I'd say about this that we didn't say already. Just that, yeah, this is my very definition of a perfect album. I truly never get tired of it. Yeah, I could listen to it as soon as we get off here from start to finish and be quite content to do so. Yeah. If I were to have a number one rather than going chronologically, this would be it.
Okay.
Good choice. Really good choice. All right. Ken, over to you.
As we've talked about, these aren't necessarily our top 10 albums. Um, that would be very difficult to do, but just 10 of albums that we think are perfect. From here on, I'm going with albums that played a significant role in my life. Um, and for number 10, one of the most famous rock trios of all time, a debut album that was produced by the band that only released 5 albums, and that is The Police, Outlandos d'Amour, with, of course, the hit Roxanne. I remember very clearly sitting at my mom's breakfast table with just a radio sitting in an open window. I don't remember what I was doing. I was just chilling. And Roxanne came on. I hadn't heard anything like it before. Um, Even though they were considered at the time post-punk, and there were other post-punk bands that I was aware of, but it's still, it had that rawness of sound. This whole album has a nice rawness of sound, which they wouldn't always have, of course, through their 5 albums. I like every single one of their albums, but this one just holds a special place in my heart. A good set list starts off with Next to You and So Lonely, very rocking, upbeat, mosh pit type songs. Then Roxanne doesn't come along till the third song of the first side. Um, and Can't Stand Losing You on that. I really do like Born in the 50s, since I was born in the 50s, barely.
I
Be
like
My
that
Girl
barely
is just,
part.
yeah. Be My Girl Sally is just hilarious. It's just it just goes to show right offhand their great sense of humor. And interestingly enough, I didn't even think about it for several years in recognizing the reggae and the ska influence of their sound. I think it's because of the instrumentation, and it wasn't until I read something, I think in Rolling Stone magazine back when they talked about real music. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. But yeah, this was one of those eye-opening albums. And to me, it remains my favorite Police album, and it's just perfect.
Perfect. Again, the gist of the show. That's a good choice.
Ken, do you feel like that this is your favorite partly because they were still new to each other and they hadn't come to the point where they disliked each other as people basically and grew apart musically?
Well, that does feed into it. They are a more cohesive band, and it's just like I say, part of it is the rawness of sound. Um, Later on, of course, they would get into what I refer to as a more produced sound. A smooth mixes and all of that. Um, when they're each of them were in different rooms when they were recording. Um, but yeah, it's a combination of both of those things. And I think the unity of them as a band at this point really does come across, especially after comparing it or when comparing it to the later albums. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick note. I remember watching an interview with them that was done for the New Music Journalism music show that aired in Canada and the US. This was like back in 82, I think it was. And they were all three of them sitting at a picnic table talking with the interviewer, and Stuart Copeland grabbed a glass of water and threw it at Sting, like literally threw it at him. And he literally, like, Andy Summers is like sitting in between them, and Sting just attacked him, like ran after him, right? And literally, Andy Summers is looking at the camera guy like, what the hell is this? Like, what? Like, do you believe this shit? Like, and that was not scripted. Like they fought on camera.
Yeah.
Right? This was as far back as 82. So the rift started to happen quite quickly, right? I mean, between them.
Right.
But very juvenile
And
behavior.
Stuart Copeland reportedly was the peacemaker of the band.
Yeah, and yeah, they both could talk to Andy Summers, but they couldn't talk to each other. They
Yeah.
could not get along at one point. It was just like,
Yeah.
you know, um, so no, it's a good choice. It's a really good choice. All right, Jim, over to you.
Over to me. Okay, so as we're all going chronologically, I think I'm the farthest one back. So this is an album from '73, and frankly, there's probably 4 albums from this artist in the '70s that you could put in the that anyone can make an argument for as a perfect album. I happen to go with the one that kind of means the most to me, and also it's the one that I can sort of sit through comfortably and want to just pick it up and play the whole thing all over again. And this is Inner Visions by Stevie Wonder. Um, you know, like I was saying, there's probably 4 albums from the '70s that you could classify as perfect from Stevie. And this just seems to be the greatest for me. At times it's funky, contemplative, sweet, joyful, humorous, very, very doteful. I just absolutely adore this album. For those unfamiliar with it, um, 9 tracks, Living for the City, and Higher Ground are probably the monster hits from the album. But even the lesser songs are just classic. Just the whole of side 2. I mean, starts with Higher Ground, Jesus Children of America, very funky, upbeat tune. All in Love is Fair, Don't You Worry About a Thing, and He's a Mr. Know-It-All. I mean, and then again, side 1, Too High, Visions, Living for the City, Golden Lady. Every track on here is just a solid diamond, and I think it's the epitome, if I can use the phrase incorrectly, of perfection. Um, Loving me some Stevie Wonder, and Inner Visions is the diamond for me.
It is
Yeah,
a good
that whole
choice, isn't it?
'70s, basically '72 to '82, I think he was just absolutely
That's right.
unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was the
and
best
yeah,
friend.
it's an ass shaker of an album, and there's nothing wrong with shaking your ass now and again, right? I mean,
That's your first time using that phrase in this series, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
It might be. It might be.
I think it is.
probably won't be the last.
I bet not.
Um, no, he was on a hot streak. Yeah, you're right, Bill. I mean, and at one point when he was in the process of renegotiating his contract with Tamla Motown, and he was writing songs in the key of life, and he withheld the album from Berry Gordy until Berry Gordy like acquiesced to his conditions for his new contract. Like, I've got this, I'm working on this. It's double album plus a single of extra tracks. You're not gonna get it until I get my, I guess it was like $1 million or something within like overall, like the new contract that he wanted. And he had Berry Gordy over a barrel because Berry Gordy had already done the projections for the following year for the releases for the shareholders, so for Motown. So you got to give me your product. And he's like, give me the money. Show me the money. Right? He knew that phrase before it was popular in Jerry Maguire, right? So I mean, that was hilarious. I thought that was hilarious. That is a really good choice. Um, my
Perfect.
It's perfect. Yes, it is. My selection for day 10 is we are going to February 13th, 1976 for the release of the, to some people, much anticipated A Trick of the Tail. Genesis,
Ooh.
Okay.
the follow-up release minus Peter Gabriel to Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. 8 tracks. I mean, just a bit of background. Peter Gabriel had left the band at the end of the tour for the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. They rehearsed a bunch of people. as lead vocalist. There were rumors that Phil Collins wanted Peter Gabriel out because he wanted to become a lead vocalist. And according to Peter Gabriel, on the documentary portion of the reissue of this album, that is utter bullshit, according to Peter Gabriel. Phil Collins did not want him to leave. Phil Collins would have been happy just to be the drummer, but they worked on these tracks. And for me, this is a more linear album in terms of it's still progressive, it's still intricate and multi-layered, but it's a lot more linear in terms of going from A to B to C to D in terms of the lyrical content and the arrangements, right? We're not talking about some mystical traveler from outer space with the bat wings on the head and the fluorescent, luminescent makeup or whatever you want to call it.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is, for me, a much more accessible album from Mach 2 or Mach 3 at this point of Genesis. There was a point where I started getting into Genesis around 1990, and my mom and I had an agreement over something, and she says to me, I've said this story before, but it's quite true. She said to me, go pick out a CD that you want at HMV, which was open at the time. Have them put them on hold. I'll go in and I'll get it for you the next day when I'm able to go out and stuff. Well, she comes back home with the entire Genesis catalog. Because I just kept putting stuff on. Okay, I'll take this. We're talking from like Trespass all the way up to Abacab at that point. It was just like, and she was like, I've got a bone to pick with you. Like, you put these on hold, I was like, but Ma, I say, okay, fine. You get a pass this time, but don't ever do it to me again. This album is fantastic. Starts off with Dancing on a Volcano. The beautiful, exquisite, Entangled, co-written by Steve Hackett and Tony Banks. One of the last times they actually were able to get along, apparently, in terms of writing composition within the band. Squonk, which to me is a straightforward rock track. It ends, side one ends with Madman Moon, solo composition by Banks. Side two starts off with the comical robbery, assault and battery, which there is a video for out there. Ripples comes next. Beautiful, amazing track. And the video for this features Phil Collins wearing a Minnesota North Stars shirt, a hockey team, right, at the time, who would go on to become Dallas and then whatever. The title track, again, just, it's very playful, very whimsical, very substantial, but it's still a whimsical track. And then Los Angeles, the instrumental, which is basically, to me, fast-paced jazz fusion. Phil Collins at this point took what he was doing with Brand X and just incorporated that into what he was doing in Genesis. And the track is amazing. It's amazing, right? When they do it live, they do it at more of a breakneck tempo. I prefer this version. Not that there's anything wrong with what's on Seconds Out, etc., but I think that from top to bottom, this album maintains the quote-unquote ingredients of progressive rock, but it serves it up in a more accessible way for people and for me. So, and this is the album I go to usually. So
I gotta say that I struggled with leaving this one off my list. There's many albums that it's like, if it weren't for that one song, it would be perfect. And I think, Armando, we talked about doing a show on that type of thing.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, if we get to it. The only thing on this album that kind of prevented it from me from being that sheer perfection is Robbery, Assault, and Battery. I like it, but just some of the comical Genesis songs just kind of leave me cold. And as much as I love the playing on it, and Phil singing is fun and whatnot, to me it's just kind of like a little slight burnish on the album. But Trick of the Tail is easily in my top 2 of Genesis studio albums. So
And yeah, no, fair enough. I just, I think that again, this was a more accessible album in
oh
terms of
yeah.
coming off of the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I mean, when you've got Tony Banks saying, I liked some of the musical ideas on Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, but the overall concept of the album leaves me very cold and I don't like it and the storyline, because at that point, Peter Gabriel wanted to write the lyrics all on his own. So you had, first of all, they were in, backtrack a little bit, they were in Headley Grange, which basically is a haunted house, according to Robert Plant and Steve Hackett and the rest of the band, because Led Zeppelin recorded, some of their albums there. And Robert Plant is convinced that Headley Grange is haunted, right? Because they heard noises and stuff. This is a more cohesive album in terms of everyone's writing together and collaborating. So, at least that is my choice for day 10.
I have a question. I remember, I don't know if it was a video interview or if I read it, that after Gabriel left, they were searching for a new lead singer, and they were using Phil Collins just as kind of a fill-in voice in rehearsals. And after auditioning however many other singers, they just finally came to the conclusion that it's like, well, he's right here. We already have him. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's exactly what happened. I mean,
That's consistent. Yeah.
yeah,
thought
and
so.
the one song that got him the gig, as it were, was Squonk,
Mm,
Yeah.
because I mean,
yeah.
Phil Collins, I mean, obviously he sang backup on the albums and he knew the songs, so he would teach the songs to the vocalists that were auditioning. And he admitted that, at one point it was a half-assed attempt to look for a new lead vocalist because they already had one in the band, right?
Yeah.
And it was his wife that convinced him at the time to say, like, why don't you try? Like, why don't you just do it? And he really didn't want to come from up, behind the drum kit, but I, I don't think this is Genesis light at all. I mean,
No, I
The
agree.
rest they say is history.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so there you have it, guys. Day 10 of our 31 perfect albums. Again, put in the comments below, down there, what your what your choice for a perfect album is, right? Again, no right or wrong answers, just opinions. So I want to thank Jim, Ken, and Bill for joining me on this episode. We will be right back with episode 11. All right, for 31 perfect albums. Have a good day. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.